What is up, everybody? Welcome into the show. It is a beautiful Wednesday, November 5th, and we're live right here on Philadelphia Eagles Now. Chase Senior here with you. Thanks to everybody, by the way, who tuned into our live show yesterday for the 2025 NFL trade deadline. Had a blast just talking about all of the moves across the NFL, talking about the Eagles, and obviously looking ahead to this big Packers game. Today, live on the show, there's plenty to get into here as the storylines around the Birds continue to heat up. So coming up here on the Philadelphia Eagles Now rundown, going to get into the latest Philadelphia Eagles news. Post-NFL trade deadline, we'll take a look at the top 5 free agent targets who could make sense for Philadelphia. I'm going to explain why Howie Roseman truly is one of one and why all of us should be very appreciative about the fact that he's the general manager for this football team. We're going to open up the floor for a mailbag. Get your questions in starting right now using the hashtag Eagles, or you could send in a super chat. And then we'll do our Eagles-Packers preview looking ahead to Monday Night Football. The Eagles did just release this news right here that the Birds are going to throw it back for this Monday game against Green Bay to Week 1 in Brazil last year with their uniform combination. They will be rocking their black helmets, white tops, black pants. Eagles also just made a roster move. I predicted this was going to happen yesterday when they released Terrace Marshall from the practice squad and they released Patrick Johnson from the active roster to make room for Nolan Smith. I had told everybody, I think PJ going to be back on the taxi club. The Eagles today, just moments ago, added him back to the practice squad. More depth at that edge rusher spot. Also, some Eagles buzz here. I've been talking about this week, and this is starting to make the rounds on social media to a lot more Eagles fans just outside of the people who watch this show, even though we've had 3 million people tune in over the last month. Michael Carter has played 85% of his snaps inside slot. But the Eagles are going to be cross-training him to also play at safety. Now, right now, their starters, Reed Blankenship, Andrew Makuba. Sidney Brown is the third safety. It would not surprise me if soon, once Carter gets more acclimated, once he starts to learn this system, if he becomes the third safety. And it's just another way for him to see the field. That was one trade acquisition for the Birds. Of course, on Monday morning, the Eagles did make that trade for Jaelan Phillips. One of the reasons I'm excited about this trade, he gets to reunite with Vic Fangio. And he said right when he got off the plane, when he arrived in Philadelphia, there's literally no other place I'd rather be. And he specifically mentioned being able to link back up with Vic. Well, how about how Vic Fangio used him in 2023 when Phillips was on his way to having a career year before he tore his Achilles? He had 6.5 sacks in 8 games. Well, Jaelan Phillips under Fangio rushed the passer on a higher percentage of dropbacks, 87%, with Fangio than any of the 3 other coordinators who Phillips played under. And with Fangio, Jaelan Phillips had his highest sack rate at 3.3%. I also think this is underrated that because he knows the scheme, he'll be able to play right away for Philadelphia, hopefully as soon as Monday night against Green Bay. For our mailbag coming up, a reminder, get those questions in. If you have a question, you have a hot take, you want to talk Birds, we're going to open up the floor and chop it up with all of you. That'll be segment number 3. Use the hashtag Eagles or send in a super chat. And we have almost 500 people watching live already. Yesterday, 2,000 people were watching live. It was incredible. Let's run it back. We're live on Eagles Now. Chase Senior, Jake Chipper here with you. Hit that thumbs up icon, like the video if you're ready to talk some birds. I guarantee you, if we get up to 100 likes, we're going to get about 500 people in here. We're at 470 right now. So do me a favor, smash that thumbs up icon, like the video. And with that, let's start the official show right now. What is up, everybody? Welcome into the show. You're watching Philadelphia Eagles Now. Chase Senior here with you. And as always, no matter where you are, how you're tuned in, thank you so much for making today's show a part of your day. What we're getting into here, following the NFL trade deadline, where obviously Howie Roseman made 3 trades in the lead up to it, Michael Carter, Jaire Alexander, and Jaelan Phillips. I want to take a look at the top free agent targets who the Eagles could sign if they have a position or a spot of need after the deadline. Let's begin here, though. To all my real ones out there, let me ask you a question. Are you a diehard Eagles fan? A lot of you watching this show, you are, right? Well, if you want Eagles coverage and shows every single day, year-round, I'm bringing the heat. This is your go-to spot. Hit that subscribe button, but also turn on your notifications by hitting that bell icon and hit all. Therefore, anytime we publish a show like this, anytime we go live, you will be notified. Top free agent number 1. For the Birds here. And really, I'm honing in on positions of need for Howie Roseman's football team. CJ Uzomah, tight end. Now, why this could make sense for the Eagles and more background on the player. He was with the Birds last year. He gives you really good size at 6'6", 262 pounds. CJ Uzomah has never been a dynamic, athletic freak of a tight end who's a great pass catcher, right? But he's a really good blocking tight end. What have the Eagles missed this year outside of Dallas Goedert? And Dallas Goedert is one of the best all-around tight ends in football, and he's a terrific blocker. They have missed having a tight end behind Goedert who's a stout blocker, especially when they go jumbo, when they go heavy. Grant Calcaterra, not a good blocker. They have used Cam Latu, a practice squad-level player, as that type of blocker and fullback, and he's been good in those spots. But if the Eagles feel as though they have a need at backup tight end and they want to go heavy and they want a tight end who can help them with some of these heavy jumbo looks, CJ Uzomah can help them there. Plus, he has familiarity with this scheme. 5th round pick in 2015. He spent time with the Bengals, Jets, and Eagles. He didn't play in the Super Bowl last year, but did get a Super Bowl ring with the Eagles. Didn't catch a pass, but again, they used him primarily as a blocker, and he did some H-back with Philadelphia as well as a pretty good lead blocker for this offense. Why the Eagles would elect to do this is if they wanted to bring in the blocking tight end, as I mentioned, who could play a little fullback as well. Free agent target number 2 goes along the interior offensive line for the Eagles here, and that is Brandon Scherff. Now, going into the deadline, I had said interior offensive line is a sneaky need for the Eagles, and I pinpointed Jackson Powers-Johnson as a player who I would love for the Eagles to go after. Tyler Steen's been fine, but is fine good enough in a year where you think that you can win a Super Bowl, where you can go back-to-back? The depth pieces along the interior also aren't great, or if there is an injury that were to happen along the interior offensive line, Brandon Scherff could make a semblance of sense, right? 5th overall pick in 2015. Good size, more of a slender interior offensive lineman, but he's really tall, 6'5", 315 pounds, a very well-accomplished player in his career, a first-team All-Pro in 2020, a 5-time Pro Bowler with Washington. They drafted him in 2015 out of Iowa, and last year with Jacksonville, he played pretty solid. I'm actually surprised that teams with offensive line needs haven't brought him in. Maybe he's just content at this point of his life and of his career. 74.5% pass blocking grade according to Pro Football Focus. He played more than 1,000 snaps on offense at right guard last year. Did not give up a sack of Trevor Lawrence or Mac Jones. Only gave up 1 hit. Did give up 17 pressures. He got beat somewhat often along the interior. Why the Eagles would do this is if they wanted more insurance along the interior offensive line. For a stretch run, he would know that he doesn't have to get the body ready for a full 17-game slate, but if he had to get the body ready for a few games, maybe he'd be able to do that. Howie Roseman said yesterday, you can never have enough corners, and their corner depth was tested early on in the year. Look at what he did going into the deadline. Traded for Michael Carter, traded for Jaire Alexander. Stephon Gilmore is still out there. Yes, he's older, not the player who he once was. He's 35 years old, but the pedigree, the resume, obviously very impressive. Defensive Player of the Year in 2019, a former first-team All-Pro. He was a Pro Bowler as recently as 2021. Last year played for the Vikings, and the Vikings did have one of the best defenses in the NFL, and he played a lot. And when Howie Roseman is building his roster, he always looks at the lines first on defense and on offense, obviously. But on defense, he looks at the defensive line, looks at corner as that secondary primary group. Last year in 2024 for Gilmore, his coverage numbers targeted 80 times, did give up 49 catches, 520 yards, 3 touchdowns in coverage allowed, did have 9 pass breakups and a pick, and a quarterback rating allowed of 87.5. I always want you to be involved in this show. I want you to have a voice on this show. So is there a free agent who you want the Eagles to sign? If that's the case, drop that name for me down below in the comment section right now. Let's get to our sponsor before we get to a couple of marquee free agents who I know you're excited to hear about. And our friends at Ridge, making today's Philadelphia Eagles now possible. I've been using this wallet for a long time. It's practical, it's sleek, it's durable, and I'm somebody who hates having too much in my pockets. This really helps me because it holds up to 12 cards, and it's thinner than my iPhone. I love it, and I want you to test it out for yourselves. Head to ridge.com/chat, and I don't think you're ever going to go back because this is also a wallet that will last you forever. My old wallet, it was a giant crusty leather brick. It was so big and heavy, shoot, at times I was convinced it made my back hurt. But the Ridge 2.0 is the most refined version of the Ridge wallet. They've been perfecting the wallet for 12 years. Everything is better with this. It's 10% lighter. Every gram matters in the Ridge Wallet 2.0. They found the perfect balance. They made it more modular with improved cash straps, money clips, and the AirTag attachments. And the surface design is also really cool. It's made with premium materials like aluminum, titanium, and carbon fiber. And they have over 50 plus colors and styles to choose from. I'm pretty simple, so I just like the black one. But if you're a diehard Eagles fan watching this show and you're in need of a wallet, there you go. How beautiful is that? Over 100,000 five-star reviews. This is proof that Ridge is a gift that people love to receive. And they're not just about wallets. They create premium everyday carry essentials like key cases, suitcases, and their game-changing power banks, all built with the same sleek, durable design. You'll find the perfect gift for every wish list. So here you go. For a limited time, Ridge is having their huge Black Friday sale. Head to ridge.com. Ladies and gentlemen, get up to 47% off your order. This is by far the biggest discount they've given all year. That's ridge.com/chat for up to 47% off your order during their biggest sale of the year. After you make your purchase, they will ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them that we sent you. Free agent target number 4 for the Birds. This is a player who's gaining a lot of buzz and traction and attention. That is Asante Samuel Jr. Of course, his pops, a legendary cornerback in the National Football League for the New England Patriots, and then with the Philadelphia Eagles. You felt as though in big-time spots, it was Asante Samuel back in the day for the Birds and the Pats who was always making a big play. He was a gambler on the outside. He wasn't the best tackler, but my goodness, he was a marquee playmaker at that corner spot, did such a great job of reading the eyes of the quarterback. He has a lot of visits set up here, and this is obviously a fluid situation. Jordan Schultz with this reporting that Samuel Jr., who was recently cleared by doctors after undergoing a spinal fusion procedure, is starting to take visits. He's going to have visits with the Panthers, and then also he's getting some additional visits that are starting to pile in here. So the Panthers are one, Green Bay Packers another one, Minnesota Vikings, the San Francisco 49ers showing some interest as well. This is a player who was a second-round pick out of Florida State in 2021, and he's primarily been an outside corner, double-digit pass breakups every single season except for last year when he hurt his shoulder And then that ended up being that neck spinal issue that he was dealing with. He had also long been dealing with stinger symptoms. And so I'm hoping that he can get on the road to recovery, and hopefully this is a sign that he's on that road to recovering, because this is a really talented player who's still young, and I think he has some really good football left in him, obviously. And then lastly, if the Eagles want to upgrade at safety or bring in a depth piece at safety, Justin Simmons, surprisingly, is still out there. And obviously this is a move that we talked about a few times here on the show, and it would make a lot of sense for Philadelphia. He played under Vic Fangio. He knows defensive backs coach Christian Parker from their Broncos days together. He was an all-pro under Fangio. The Eagles don't have a ton of safety depth right now. Blankenship, Makuba, Sidney Brown, that's really it. Marcus Epps is on injured reserve. That's probably why the Eagles are cross-training Michael Carter to play a little bit of safety. Makuba, I like him as a player. I said this when they drafted him, but he has had his lapses in coverage. And if the Eagles just want a veteran, experienced presence back there, Justin Simmons would fit that bill. So if the Eagles do make a move, you always know we're going to keep you in the know right here on Philadelphia Eagles Now. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. And again, let me know a player who's out there in free agency who you'd like the Eagles to pinpoint and go after. Don't forget, for our mailbag, use the hashtag Eagles or send in a super chat. That's hashtag Eagles or send in a super chat. Segment number 2, we're going to talk about Howie Roseman here and how he's the best general manager in the NFL, but potentially the best general manager in professional sports right now. But again, for our mailbag segment, that'll be coming up after we talk about Howie Roseman here for segment number 2. That'll be segment number 3. Our mailbag will be. So use the hashtag Eagles or send in a super chat. That's hashtag Eagles or send in a super chat. Shout out to the recent commenter club, Cool Rains, Fred Jussin, TJ, TG, Earth, all in the building. Good to see everybody here. 462 people watching live, 143 likes. Continue to hit that thumbs up icon and like the video. The Thunder Hounds getting that question in using the hashtag Eagles.
There we go.
Good job by you. Chip, how we doing on questions, by the way?
I was about to say, keep getting them in, baby. That one is only our second question. Plenty of opportunity to get on the show. So, again, just following the footsteps of the Thunder Hounds right there with a great question. Hashtag Eagles. Send in that super chat to be answered at the start of the mailbag. Or we can answer your guys' questions, man. Your chance to get involved here on the program. Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Michael asking a crazy question earlier. A juicy rumor. I don't know where Michael heard this rumor, but this would be something. We'll get to this during the mailbag.
Looking forward to that. Looking forward to that. All right, let's talk some Howie Roseman here on the show.
Shout out to John Galt. John Galt, real one. Getting a question in there.
All right, Howie Roseman segment coming up, segment number 2. Let's get into it here. I'm seeing some good questions come in here down in the comment section, which is awesome to see. I always love chopping it up with everybody. All right, let's move forward here on the live show after catching a quick breath. And let's dive into it here live on Philadelphia Eagles Now. Let's go, let's go, let's go. And as always, go Birds. This is Philadelphia Eagles Now. Chase Senior here with you. No matter where you are, how you're tuned in, thank you so much for making today's show a part of your day. So many fantastic content options out there for people who cover the Eagles, regardless of the medium. So anytime you decide to hang out here with me, I'm greatly appreciative of that. Coming up here on the show, Howie Roseman, the Eagles general manager, is an absolute gangster, and Eagles fans are lucky to have him as the guy who's running this organization. And anytime you as a general manager become a meme and there is an AI photo generated of you with the ski mask on and you have the nickname of Ski Mask Howie, you know that you're one of one and you know you're doing something right. And we're going to go through all of this here on the show. I do want to begin here, though. Let your voices be heard. Here on this show, it's a platform where you can always be loud and you can always have an opinion, just like me. If you think Howie is the best general manager in the National Football League, I want you to hit that thumbs up icon and like the video. If you don't think that's the case, and that's fine, we can disagree, I want you to comment why. I'll keep my eyes peeled on the comment section. So I've been around Howie Roseman over the last couple of NFL combines in Indianapolis. I've been around him and interviewed him at the last couple of Super Bowls. And one thing that has stood out as I was putting together this show and when I've been at the NFL combine, Howie Roseman compared to the other general managers across the league always draws a massive crowd. Why is that? Obviously, there's a lot of interest in the Eagles. They're the fourth largest media market in the country, and they have a daily 365 a year demand because people in Philadelphia are devoted to this football team. They're passionate about this football team. They love this football team, and they want to hear about this football team. But people who cover the NFL are the ones who attend events like the NFL Combine, or they attend events like the Super Bowl. And so this isn't a fan-related thing where people crowd around Howie Roseman's podium to talk to him. These are media members, and people crowd around Howie because they want to hear from a brilliant football mind, and they want to hear from the man himself what his team-building strategy is, because he's had so much success as an NFL executive. And I think also there's this. Howie is very nice. He's very gracious with his time. He is very personable. He has a good personality. He's willing to crack some jokes from time to time, and he'll take all types of questions and he'll expand on his answers. And I think people really appreciate that when they're interviewing him. But I think people, whether it's media members or fans, people who keep tabs on the NFL and the Eagles, they find Howie Roseman to be very relatable. He's not a former player. He's not some jack dude who's physically imposing. He's a normal-sized guy. He never played football, but he grew up always wanting to be a general manager in the New York area. He went to the University of Florida, and he's infamously known for being in his dorm room, always studying to one day be a general manager. This was his passion. So like you, like me, like a lot of other people, he climbed the ranks in this industry, and he wanted to be a GM because of his overall love for the game of football. And Howie Roseman's path is also a relatable one that a lot of other people can relate to as far as going into an industry, starting at the bottom, and working yourself up. This is a pretty incredible run here for Howie, and he's literally been with the Philadelphia Eagles since he got out of college at Florida, as he's a Gator, the Gator Chomp. Shout out to the Gator fans out there. And he doesn't know anything other than the Philadelphia Eagles. He started in 2000 as a front office intern. 2001, 2002, that's when he started to get involved in the salary cap. Obviously now he's gotten to a point where he's mastered it and he knows the rules and the intricacies so well. 2003 to 2005, he becomes the director of football administration for the Philadelphia Eagles. 2006, 2007, he rises up to become the vice president of football administration. 2008, 2009, pretty good gig right here. You're getting close to being a GM. He was the vice president of player personnel. Then he becomes one of the youngest general managers of all time. 2010 to 2014, he became the Eagles general manager. Then Chip Kelly banished him, got rid of him from the general manager post, and had him move his office to the other side of the facility. And so from 2015 to 2018, he became the executive vice president of football ops. He didn't go anywhere else to become a general manager. He stayed with the Eagles, Jeffrey Lurie's right-hand man, and obviously Jeffrey Lurie deserves a lot of credit for giving Howie the leeway to do what he does. And then from 2019 on, he's been the executive vice president of the Eagles and the general manager of this ball club. And it's pretty crazy to think back to what happened with Howie. And what transpired during that Chip Kelly regime. Chip comes in, and a lot of what we see for offenses in college football and the NFL right now are thanks to Chip Kelly. But he is not a beloved figure in Philadelphia. And he comes in, he has a winning record year one. The Eagles lose that home playoff game to the Saints, and Chip is acting as though he's the king of the city, right? And that he is going to run this organization. He didn't really agree with Howie because Howie had never really played. He looked at Howie as a numbers guy. And so he got rid of Howie as the general manager. I'm not sure how he had that say with Jeffrey Lurie, but after Howie got banished, after his office got moved, he becomes GM again. Post Chip Kelly, Jeffrey Lurie went back to him. That's their long-standing relationship. And Howie returned with a vengeance. And now it's to a point where he's the best GM in football. And I think that you can make the argument with how he does business, how he makes moves, the value that he extracts, the understanding of the salary cap, and how he just operates as an executive. He might be the best GM in American professional sports. NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, NHL. And now, after winning 2 rings, he's on a Hall of Fame trajectory. We're talking about a guy who is a 2-time Super Bowl champion, 2-time Executive of the Year. And here's where things get really interesting and impressive, frankly. He's won 2 different rings with 2 different head coaches and quarterbacks. Think about how hard that is to do. Usually when you win Super Bowls, you have some organizational continuity at head coach and quarterback. Not for Howie. Wins one in 2017, wins one in 2024 with different head coaches and different quarterbacks. That's highly impressive. And think about the teams that the Eagles have beaten in their 2 Super Bowl wins. Super Bowl 52, Super Bowl 59. Tom Brady and Bill Belichick, Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. And what you love about Howie is his team-building strategy and the way that he goes about roster construction. And I want to talk more about this coming up just around the corner, so don't you dare go anywhere. We're going to continue to have a fantastic conversation, but in the meantime, let's get to our sponsor. Our friends at Ridge, making today's Philadelphia Eagles now possible. I've been using the Ridge wallet over the last couple of months. It's been a game changer. It's durable, it's sleek, it's easy to use. You can put as many as 12 cards into the Ridge Wallet 2.0, and it's made my life so much easier. I always love telling you about products that I actually use myself. And for a limited time, Ridge is having their huge Black Friday sale. Head to ridge.com to get up to 47% off your order. This is by far the biggest discount they've given all year. That's ridge.com/chat for up to 47% off your order during their biggest sale of the year. After you make your purchase, they will ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them that Philadelphia Eagles Now sent you. Now, why I like the Ridge. My old wallet got to a point where it was so big, it became a giant crusty leather brick. I also hate having too much in my pockets. I don't have to worry about that with the Ridge 2.0. It's 10% lighter. Every gram matters in the Ridge Wallet 2.0. They found the perfect balance. They made it more modular with improved cash straps, money clips, and AirTag attachments. I also really like the design with premium materials like aluminum, titanium, carbon fiber. It holds up to 12 cards plus cash. There are plenty of options too. You can get a Philadelphia Eagles Ridge wallet, or they have over 50 plus colors and styles to choose from. You can even get a wallet that features every NFL, Major League Baseball, or college team. This is perfect for holiday gifting, especially since Ridge is having their biggest sale of the year right now. Over 100,000 5-star reviews. This is proof that Ridge is a gift that people love to receive. And they obviously have options and products outside of the Ridge wallet. Also, losing your wallet, it's the worst, right? But with the Ridge Tracker card, you'll always know exactly where it is before panic mode kicks in. Perfect peace of mind for holiday travel and gifting. Going to put that link down below in the comment section and in the description of today's Philadelphia Eagles Now. We appreciate Ridge for making today's show possible. All right, let's continue to talk about Howie Roseman here. What we know, right, is that he's the most aggressive general manager in the National Football League. Arguably the best GM in all of professional sports. He has mastered his knowledge of the salary cap, which is what goes into the brilliance that he exudes and displays with his team building strategy. And so routinely, so often, he's able to fleece other teams on the regular and get good value. It now has come to the point where you look on Twitter after he makes a move, and people who cover the NFL very closely, fans alike, have said, why did teams do business with Howie Roseman? His contracts are very player-friendly. Why that is important for agents and for players in free agency. Philadelphia, because of how Howie does business, how he puts together these contracts, the culture that is put in place by Howie, by Jeffrey Lurie, by Nick Sirianni, by Jalen Hurts, and others, the Eagles have become one of the top destinations in pro football. And year in, year out, Howie does everything that he needs to do in order to improve the football team. It doesn't matter if it's a top 10 player or if it's 51 to 53 on the 53-man roster. If Howie can make a move to bulk up the team, whether it be for a star or for depth pieces to help out the coaching staff, he's going to do that. And again, you have to give thanks to Jeffrey Lurie for allowing him to do that. Another underrated thing is that Howie is smart and savvy. He has very good foresight, and he can kind of predict what's going to happen, right, as far as markets go. He always gets ahead of these contract extensions. He signs players early as compared to late. The benefit of that is that sometimes you can get players for 60 to 70% of their market value early compared to if you wait, then you have to overpay for that player because all these other teams are paying those players and it skyrockets the price tag. Here for the NFL trade deadline, think about what Howie did. He didn't wait until right before the deadline for other teams to make moves to dictate the asking price or the market. He traded for Michael Carter a week before the deadline. He traded for Jaire Alexander on the Saturday before the Tuesday deadline. Bright and early on Monday morning, he traded for Jaelan Phillips, knowing that other teams were going to be interested in trading for a pass rusher. And the great ones, whether it be in sports, whether it be in business, whether it be in life, fitness, whatever, they have a similar mentality, right? They're never content with being good. They always have that consistent pursuit of being great. And that's Howie. And a reason why I wanted to do this show today, and a reason why I put this together in this manner, and why we're having this conversation, is partially based on what Howie said on Tuesday after the NFL trade deadline about the moves that he made, but specifically when he was asked about rumors about him trading for Myles Garrett or Micah Parsons. Now, he did joke during the Jimmy Kempski question, are you trying to get me fined? Because he can't specifically talk about players. But what Howie can do is talk about the philosophy and the thought process. And here's what he said about him going big game hunting and being willing to give up multiple first-round picks for star pass rushers. Quote, I feel like when there's opportunities to be aggressive for the right players, we're not going to sit on our hands. I don't think that you have great success without taking great risks at times. They've got to make sense in terms of the risks that you're taking. We can't be afraid to fail. I think for a lot of times, for you to get to the top, you've got to be willing to take chances that may look controversial at times. If there was an opportunity to do that we thought gave us an opportunity to be the last team standing and put confetti on our heads, we're going to be aggressive in that direction. I just feel like that's the right way to operate our team. That doesn't come without mistakes. I understand that, but I won't live with regret. I won't live with regret in the way that we operate around here. If we feel passionate about something, if we think that the value's right, we're not going to be afraid to pull the trigger. Obviously, he's talking about football there, but you can translate that to life and business. If you have personal goals and you feel passionate about something, a relationship, you can go about it in that manner. Just incredible stuff from Howie Roseman. And because he said that, this is why the Eagles always can have a competitive advantage with him as general manager. This is why the Eagles are looked at as the cream of the crop and the model organization in football right now. This is why they've got an opportunity to have sustained excellence with their football team as well. And I'm just spitting it off the top right here, you think about all the times that the Eagles have made the playoffs of late, right? 2017, 2018, 2019. Missed the playoffs in 2020. But they've been back in 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024. That is going to the playoffs every year since 2017 except for one. Other teams across the NFL would die for that. What's that? 7 of the 8 last seasons that the Eagles have made it to the postseason. And so I'm picturing Myles Garrett here because the Eagles this offseason are going to continue to be tied to players like that. Why? And why do I talk about trade rumors on this show? Because Howie is always looking to make moves like this if he believes that it makes the team better, because he's always willing to be aggressive, because he knows aggressive businesses win, aggressive teams win, and when the Eagles have been aggressive, they've had that confetti on their heads. And that quote kind of went viral on social media. Here at Chat Sports, we have a bunch of people who cover different NFL teams here. And I saw a couple of people here, and obviously a couple of people on social media who I don't know, saying, why can't our general manager operate like that? Why can't our GM have that type of mental process? So, Howie Roseman, I love you. Eagles fans should love you too, and we should really appreciate and admire what he's doing, but also don't take this era of Eagles football for granted, because what we're witnessing right now is a very special stretch of Philadelphia Eagles football. Be sure to give me a follow on X and Instagram. You want to reach out, let me know what you thought about this show. You can find me at Chase_Senior on X or IG. Massive platforms over there, reaching millions and millions of people here on YouTube and on social media, talking about the Birds all the time. Couple of super chats that I want to get to here. Bradley Hine, $5 super chat. Most consistent and dedicated Eagles YouTuber. Keep it up. I'm beyond excited to see how the new additions pan out. I have confidence going forward. I'm excited too. And I can't wait to see what this team looks like coming out of the bye. The Eagles are 6-1 with extra rest under Nick Sirianni. And so they've been really good coming off of bye weeks with extended rest. And that's part of the reason why I love Nick Sirianni as a head coach. Like Nick Sirianni, it's not just about calling plays. As a CEO head coach, culture, scheme, adjustments, team preparedness, they're all important. Ball security. Like, he preaches all these things. So that's why I think Sirianni is elite. And Bradley, thank you so much for that compliment. I really do appreciate that. When you combine live shows, the duration of shows, how much content we do with videos, live shows, and YouTube shorts, there isn't anybody out there who's doing more Eagles content than us. Cheryl Durstein, $1 super chat. What's up, Cheryl? Hope you and your husband are doing well. Thanks for your continued support here on the show. All right, what I want to get into next is a Philadelphia Eagles Now mailbag, where we open up the floor and take all of your questions. If you have a question, use the hashtag Eagles or send in a super chat. This is the last call because the mailbag's coming up. Chip, do we have enough questions here?
Yeah, got some good stuff. Appreciate everybody getting those questions in, including our guy, Mike Nintendo Master.
Let's go. Mike Nintendo Master. We're bringing the fire. We're bringing the energy. You know that we're doing it here on Philadelphia Eagles Now. Appreciate you, my man. And we just gave you some raffle tickets for Monday night's game, Nintendo Master. Let's go. Let's go. And Mike, you're saying that we don't bring the fire. Chip and I have 2 different YouTube channels that have reached over 3 million people in back-to-back months. We create more content than anybody else here at Chat Sports. To me, that's dedication. That's having fire, Mike. Come on now. All right. Last opportunity to get those questions in. Use the hashtag Eagles or send in a super chat. Nintendo Master, one of our most loyal viewers here on the show. I kind of imagine Nintendo Master as one of those guys who's like in a control room with like 20 different screens, and he's just keeping tabs on every single channel at Chat Sports. Everybody type Nintendo Master in the chat. Nintendo Master in the chat to show him some love, because the guy is an absolute legend. Don Corleone, what numbers do you think the new guys will wear? You know what? I'm not sure. The Eagles are going to practice on Thursday, so we'll know then as I record this show on this Wednesday, November 5th. But I'll expand on that coming up here during our mailbag. CLX, I see you using the hashtag Eagles. Good stuff by you. Philly boy, Kane Angel, John Galt, Cool Reigns, type of Nintendo Master. Good stuff. All right, mailbag is coming up. Excited to take all of your questions. Appreciate all of the real ones for chiming in, and let's go. Really excited to talk some Eagles here on today's show because that's what we do every single day, year round. The content, it never stops. Coming up on today's Philadelphia Eagles Now, Chase Sr. here with you, taking your questions from all of the real ones and our loyal subscribers going into this Week 10 matchup on Monday Night Football against the Green Bay Packers. A huge game coming up for the EAGLES Eagles. Speaking of that game, we'll be live for a watch party right here on the show. We're going to do a longer pregame show, so catch us live, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 o'clock on the West Coast. We'll do an hour and 15-minute pregame show to set the stage for the game, and obviously we'll be live during the game and then after the game with the post-game reaction. It's the best place to experience an Eagles game day outside of being at the actual game, so let's continue to grow the Eagles Now empire. Join the movement. Lock us in and subscribe today. Let's get started with this one coming in from Bradley Hine, a $5 super chat. Most consistent and dedicated Eagles YouTuber. Keep it up. Thank you so much, sir. I'm beyond excited to see how the Eagles' new additions pan out. I have confidence going forward. Yeah, I can't wait to see how these additions pan out. Like for Jaelan Phillips, has a lot of scheme familiarity with Vic Fangio. Back in 2023, he had 6.5 sacks in 8 games before he tore his Achilles, and his sack percentage was the highest that it's been in his career. And what Fangio did with Jaelan Phillips back in 2023 on pass rush situations, he let him pin his ears back and get after the quarterback. Now, a recent development that I really like with Phillips is that he's rushed the quarterback from edge, but also defensive tackle, using his size, using his length and athleticism to impact the game in a variety of ways. When you're playing edge, it's a little bit easier to get acclimated quickly because you can get put on the field, right? And if Vic says, look, get after the quarterback on this play, that's all you have to do. For corners, the Eagles might have to ease these guys in a little bit slower just because it's so much more complex when you're playing corner compared to when you're playing edge rusher, because you really do have to read and react and know the system. There's communication that is more paramount on the back end compared to when you're playing defensive end. But for Michael Carter, he has played elite football in the slot. The Eagles are cross-training him to play a little bit of safety. For Jaire Alexander, had that bad PCL injury in 2024. I don't think he's the player who he once was when he was a 2-time second-team All-Pro, but a good veteran depth option at that cornerback spot. As far as your compliment, thank you so much, brother. There's not an Eagles content creator who creates more content than me. I do that because I have dedication. I do that because I have passion. I do that because I love this football team, and I've been a fan since I was 4 years old, just fresh off of having a binky in my mouth. Don Corleone, $2 super chat. What numbers do you think the new guys will wear? So this is a really good question of note. I'm doing this mailbag during our live show on Wednesday. The Eagles hit the practice field on Thursday. That's their first practice of the week, a little bit later than usual just because they have a Monday game. And so they will practice Thursday, Friday, Saturday. They'll leave for Green Bay, Wisconsin on Sunday. Then they game on Monday night. Then they have a quick turnaround because the Detroit Lions come to the Link Sunday Night Football in Week 11. So what numbers do I think the new guys will wear? I'll say this. There aren't a lot of good numbers for cornerbacks right now. Like Jacorian Bennett's number in the preseason, it was awful. I couldn't look at it. The numbers for pass rushers like Jaelan Phillips, a little bit better. So we'll certainly see, but the Eagles have retired a lot of numbers, so it's slim pickings, especially for DBs. The Thunderhounds. Do you think that we have a chance at getting Asante Samuel Jr. or Justin Simmons? I think the Eagles are good where they are right now. Obviously, Howie made the 3 trades in the lead up to the deadline. He has made 9 trades since the start of training camp. The deadline hit on Tuesday. I think the Eagles are in a good spot with where their roster is right now. They have Brandon Graham coming out of retirement to join them as well. And you think about any needs that the Eagles might have, I would say backup tight end along the interior offensive line. Howie did say when he talked this week that they really value cornerback depth, and that was certainly tested early in the year. Well, what did he do? He brought in Michael Carter via a trade and Jaire Alexander via a trade as well. And so I don't think the Eagles have much of a need at corner. I don't think they're going to show a lot of interest in Asante Samuel Jr. I'm rooting for him because he's a young player who's played really well. Justin Simmons, I think, would make some sense, especially if there's an injury at the safety position, because Philadelphia is a little bit thin there. But I think what's been an underrated talking point about the Michael Carter move is that they're cross-training him at safety. But for Simmons, he, of course, played under Vic Fangio, was an all-pro under Vic Fangio, knows Christian Parker. Andrew Makuba has struggled a little bit in coverage, and he gives you a really good veteran presence. Brian Reed, Chase, what do you think Howie should do with Adoree Jackson? Bury him on the depth chart or just outright release him? Can't cover to save his life. Just my opinion. Anybody who watches this show knows I am not the biggest Adoree Jackson fan. And at USC, he was an electrifying playmaker. As a corner, as a return man, that's why he was a first-round pick by the Titans back in 2017. He was solid with Tennessee. He wasn't great. He goes to New York. He was solid, but he wasn't great. He's always been solid, but not great. With the Eagles, I think he's been just okay. What really rubbed me the wrong way is the Thursday night game against the Giants. Goal line situation. Cam Skattebo gets a handoff. Adoree Jackson comes off the edge, and he just tried the shoulder, Cam Skattebo. What are you doing? You're trying to shoulder down Cam Skattebo, who's one of the most difficult running backs to take down in the National Football League. You think that's going to work in a goal line situation? To me, that is soft. But what's crazy about Adoree is that I saw some of these numbers, and they really surprised me as far as his tight window percentage forced. So Sauce Gardner has faced the opponent's number one wide receivers on 45.5% of his coverage matchups this year. That's the NFL's highest rate. When targeted, he has a forced tight window that is less than 1 yard of separation at a 52% rate. That also leads the league a minimum of 20 targets. So he's at 52%. Pat Surtain is at 51.5%. Quinyon Mitchell is at 39.6%. Max Melton is at 39.5%. Guess who's at number 5? Adoree Jackson, 39.3%. Now, sometimes that's a weird analytical stat, but it does go to show you he's had some sticky coverage downfield. So again, I'm not the biggest fan because I think he plays soft, and I think the Eagles have what they have done with their moves has spoken volumes. They like Kelee Ringo a little bit better. They traded for Michael Carter so that Cooper DeJean could play a little bit more on the outside. They traded for Jaire Alexander because they don't know, and at the very least, he can give them a little bit more depth. But look, for what it's worth, I mean, I guess the tight window throws, he's forced a high percentage of them. By the way, there was a sneak peek into the Eagles locker room. Again, we'll know what the Eagles jersey numbers are for the new players coming up here soon when they hit the practice field on Thursday. This video is going to come out after that. Jaire Alexander, I think, is going to wear number 18. Hopefully he plays better than Jalen Reagor. Andrew Nathan, ski-mask Howie with the profile picture. I love it. The Eagles still need to make a few more roster spots. Safe to assume Dillon and Jackson get cut eventually. Your thoughts? How many snaps does Jahad Campbell get on Monday night now that we added Brandon Graham and Jaelan Phillips? So that's something that I talked about this week on the show as well. And going back to Adoree Jackson, to that other question that came in, he could get cut because the Eagles have a couple of decisions to make. Now, one roster move they already made is taking Patrick Johnson off the active roster. They added him to the practice squad on Wednesday. That made room for Nolan Smith. But they've got some roster Tetris that they have to figure out here. And players like A.J. Dillon, Adoree Jackson, they could be the ones who get let go. A player like Matt Pryor is a player who could also be cut. Keep an eye on that. More roster moves will have to be made for the Philadelphia Eagles. As far as Jahad Campbell goes, he played more edge and his snaps went down because he played at edge, because the Eagles were so thin there. Obviously, they brought in a lot of reinforcements. Nolan Smith back, Brandon Graham out of retirement, traded for Jaelan Phillips. I think he's going to go back to more so playing off-ball linebacker. But Nakobe Dean has played really well, and so this is a tough thing for Vic Fangio to manage. How does he manage the snaps for Nakobe Dean and for Jahad Campbell? Because Nakobe Dean, especially against the run, which has been a little bit of a weakness this year, is so smart, so heady, a good run defender, and he helps the Eagles defense out a lot in that regard. But Jahad Campbell has also had a really good rookie season. More of your questions coming up, but let's get to our sponsor for today's Philadelphia Eagles. Now, our friends at Ridge, they have a great deal that you need to take advantage of. This wallet, it is incredible. And it's so practical. It's sleek in design. It's so durable. This might be the last wallet that I ever get because of the materials that it's made with. And this can hold up to 12 cards, and it's thinner than my iPhone. And right now, you can get a great deal for a limited time. Ridge is having their huge Black Friday sale. Head to ridge.com/chat. Get up to 47% off your order. This is by far the biggest discount they've had all year. That's ridge.com/chat for up to 47% off your order during their biggest sale of the year. After you make your purchase, they'll ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them why we sent you. Now, before I had this Ridge wallet, I had a huge leather wallet. It got so fat and heavy, and I'm somebody who hates having too much in my pockets because it really isn't practical. So with Ridge, they are unique, they are slim, they are modern. And Ridge took their game-changing wallet, they made it even better with the Ridge 2.0, the most refined version of the Ridge wallet. They've been perfecting this thing for 12 years. It's 10% lighter. Every gram matters in the Ridge Wallet 2.0. They found the perfect balance, made with premium materials like aluminum, titanium, carbon fiber. They have 50-plus colors and styles to choose from. You can even get a wallet that features every NFL, MLB, or college team. And how about the Eagles wallet? That's awesome, too. This is perfect for a stocking stuffer, holiday gifting, especially since Ridge is having their biggest sale of the year right now. Over 100,000 five-star reviews. That is proof that Ridge is a gift that people love to receive. We're approaching 140,000 subscribers here on Eagles Now. It's proof that we do a damn good job giving you Eagles content. Same can be said for Ridge as well. Obviously, they're not just about wallets. They create premium everyday carry essentials like key cases, suitcases, and their game-changing power bank. So again, 47% off ridge.com/chat. Get that Eagles wallet. You will not regret it. Mike Nintendo Master, one of our most valued viewers here on Eagles Now, with a good question here. Will Saquon be good for fantasy owners, or should they have traded him so that the Eagles can win? Look, never going to trade Saquon Barkley, right? They gave him that contract extension after last year. That's another reason why Howie and Jeffrey Lurie are awesome, why they're a model organization, because they realized that Saquon, with what he did last year, his value to the team on the field and off the field exceeded what his previous contract was. And they realized he became underpaid. So what did they do? They ripped it up. They gave him a new deal. And they said, thank you for what you did in 2024. But it was also a message. We really value you as a person, as a leader, as a team captain, and as a player on this football team. Now, I've talked about this a lot here on the show. Why was Saquon struggling all year up until week 8 when he had $150 on the ground and 2 total touchdowns against the Giants? It wasn't him. It wasn't the Madden curse. For me, it was an offensive line problem. That was evidenced by the yards before contact per carry. It was down a full 2 yards from 2024 to 2025. He's looked great to me. He's looked very explosive. You saw that against the Giants. In the pass game this year, he's also been very dynamic. I think that he's looked great this year. I think it's been an offensive line problem and an execution problem. The Eagles fixed those things against the Giants. Hopefully that is a sign of things to come. Usually the Packers this year have been a good run defense, but Rico Dowdle gashed them. Can the Eagles look at that Panthers film and say, they found something, let's duplicate that, and can Saquon have success on the ground? Obviously that'll help out a lot of people's fantasy teams. Nintendo Master, we'll see. Carol Hosey, what are your recommendations on future moves? So the trade deadline is passed. And so you can't make any more trades. As far as free agency signings, if there was one that I would think about making, Justin Simmons at safety to give you more depth there and a veteran presence in case you have some concerns about the youth at that position with Andrew Makuba getting a lot of time. And then Sidney Brown, I just don't think the Eagles really trust him all that much. If there's another move that I would make, if you have concerns about the interior offensive line, it would be for a player like Brandon Scherff. Now, Carol, if you're talking about free agency next year and the draft, I mean, I think a need on this roster could be tight end if the Eagles don't bring back Dallas Goedert, but man, he's having a career year and he is so valued as a blocker. But with how he's played this year, has he outpriced himself in free agency? Potentially for a team looking for one of the top all-around tight ends in football and a dynamic weapon. If the Eagles want to get younger and get a player who maybe is more durable at tight end, maybe they draft a tight end pretty early in the draft next year. You know that Howie is always going to look along the offensive line. Do you try to find Lane Johnson's replacement? Do you look for a right guard if you're not that confident in Tyler Steen? I think you're good at corner, but you can maybe use another depth piece there who's young and on a cost-controlled contract. You might lose to Kobe Dean. Do you look after another linebacker? Edge rusher, obviously always a position. So those are kind of the spots that I'm looking at. If you let Jahan Dotson go, if you entertain trading A.J. Brown after this year, which I would never do, Eagles fans, relax. I'm not recommending that they do that, but it could be a thing. Do you try to reset financially at wide receiver and draft a stud wide receiver? Again, these are things that NFL teams think about. Bradley Hine, another one here. Who is your biggest threat in the NFC in your opinion? I think the NFC is wide open. Let me say this. This might surprise some people, but I watch every NFL team, and I keep tabs on every NFL team. With the way that they are playing right now, I think the Seattle Seahawks are the scariest team in the NFC who could be the biggest threat to the Eagles. They have one of the best defenses in the NFL. Their offense is very creative. Sam Darnold is playing really well. Jackson Smith-Njigba leads the NFL in receiving yards. Torrey Horton, a rookie, has played really well. They just made one of the more underrated but one of my favorite moves at the NFL trade deadline, trading for Rashid Shaheed. He's one of the more electrifying, underrated playmakers in the NFL. So now you have a vertical threat who's on pace for more than 1,000 yards playing for a bad Saints team on that team. Mike McDonald is very exotic and creative with how he calls that defense. He's one of the top defensive minds in football. So I just look at Seattle as a very complete team. And if they can figure out their ground game, they're scary. And the Eagles have always struggled against Seattle for whatever reason, whether it be with Russell Wilson or not. I think Detroit is in that conversation. I think Green Bay is in that conversation, but they're a little bit inconsistent. Baker Mayfield and the Buccaneers are scary, but I do wonder with all of the injuries that they've had along the offensive line and at receiver, if they can have sustained success. You beat the Rams, but they were bludgeoning the Eagles in that first half. You obviously worry about them. The Niners, they didn't make a move for a pass rusher, so I'm dropping them out of being a team that I think could make a statement in the NFC. So it's wide open, but when the Eagles play their best ball, I think they're the best team in the NFC. Cheryl, who do you think the best trade was? I think giving up 2 1s for a cornerback is way too much. I get that the Colts had a need there, but that's just a price I wouldn't be willing to pay. I like Quinnen Williams as a player, but I just don't understand what Dallas is doing because I don't think they're close to really being a serious threat. They're going to have to just knock it out of the park in free agency next offseason in order to be a legitimate team, but they haven't been aggressive in free agency. I really like what the Saints did, trading for Rashid Shaheed. I think that is a move that can make that offense even better. What the Seahawks did in primetime against Washington, that kind of brought back memories of what the Eagles did with Michael Vick against Washington on Monday Night Football on ESPN, where they just annihilated them. And the Seahawks were up 28-0 or whatever in that first half. Like, it was such a dominant, impressive performance where you watched that game and you said, wow. And now they add Rashid Shaheed to that offense with that great defense. That's probably my favorite move. Who you got Monday Night Football? We round out our mailbag with that. PHI for the Eagles, GB for the Green Bay Packers. Let your voices be heard. Get those predictions in. Coming up next here on Philadelphia Eagles Now, we're going to give you our Eagles-Packers preview. The best preview that you will find for this game on YouTube. Keys to the game, matchups to watch, what to expect, insight as far as scouting analysis on what the Packers bring to the table, injury news, and a whole lot more. That's coming up next as we round out our live show on this Wednesday, November 5th of 2025. Really looking forward to get into that. Eagles-Packers preview coming up next here on Eagles Now. If anybody has a super chat that comes in, last call for those before our preview, because after our preview, we'll quickly sign off right after that. Cowboys fan, do you think Howie has the best trade deadline? I think that the Eagles are certainly a winner with what they did at the deadline. They had concerns at corner. They addressed it with two players. They needed edge help, and they went after an edge. So I think they were a big winner. I think the Seahawks, a big winner. Again, I think the Colts gave up too much for Sauce Gardner. All right, continue to hit that thumbs up icon, like the video. For the next half hour, we're going to preview this Eagles-Packers game, a massive game in the NFC. So let's preview it right now. Welcome into the show. You're watching Philadelphia Eagles Now. Chase Senior here with you. And as always, no matter where you are or how you're tuned in, thank you so much for making today's show a part of your day. And coming up, a huge game in the NFC on Monday Night Football as the Philadelphia Eagles hit the road to play the Green Bay Packers at Lambeau Field. This game kicking off Monday night, November 10th, 8:15 p.m. Eastern, Lambeau Field, Green Bay, Wisconsin, of course. Philadelphia coming off that bye week. And prior to the bye, they put together two really good performances on both sides of the ball. The Packers in this game, coming off a loss last week to the Carolina Panthers at home, are 2-point favorites. We as Eagles fans, we always love when the Birds are pinned as underdogs. That's our mentality as a city. The over-under, 45 even. Before we dive into this preview, it's going to be so informative for all of you. Whether you're an Eagles fan or you're a Packers fan, don't forget to hit that subscribe button for daily coverage of the Birds, but also we'll be live on Monday night for a watch party, the best place to experience an Eagles game day outside of being at the actual game. We're going to do a longer pregame show since it's a primetime huge matchup, so we'll be live at 7 p.m. Eastern. Don't forget to hit that bell icon as well and turn on your notifications by hitting all. Therefore, anytime I publish a video like this, anytime we do go live, you will be notified. Eagles-Packers has become a pretty sneaky good rivalry inside the NFC, even though obviously these two teams are not divisional foes. And this is something that has developed over the last couple of years, especially the heated moments that these two teams had during the 2024 season. Week 1 in Brazil, Philadelphia able to beat the Green Bay Packers 34-29. The Eagles had 2 turnovers on the first 2 drives of that game. Then the offense kind of came alive. In the wild card round, the Birds at Lincoln Financial Field beating Green Bay 22-10. Philadelphia really dominated that game. They forced Jordan Love into multiple turnovers. That game was a little bit too close for the Eagles' liking because the offense struggled a little bit. Dallas Goedert did have that legendary angry run. Then the Eagles able to hold off Green Bay as that game wore on. Of course, this past offseason, the Packers proposed that ban for the tush push. They didn't want that play to be legal any longer, and so Eagles fans took note of that. These fan bases on social media, in particular on X, formerly known as Twitter, they've engaged in a lot of smack talk. And going into this Week 10 tilt, these are two teams who are looked at as Super Bowl contenders, as NFC contenders. And so Philadelphia, Green Bay vying for a top spot in the NFC. This will be the first time that Jalen Hurts plays at Lambeau Field since really the Jalen Hurts era got underway. Back in 2020, final year for Doug Peterson, final year for Carson Wentz, he was really struggling. That Eagles team was awful. And so During that game, which was really weird because that was during the COVID season when no fans were allowed at games, so it was silent during this game. Wentz was bad. Jalen Hurts came in. He went 5 of 12 for 109 yards, a long touchdown pass in that game, made some plays with his legs, made some really nice throws, and then from there on out, the Eagles gave him starts to see if he could be the future franchise quarterback. Of course, Sirianni hired going into 2021, and Hurts has been the starter since, and he's gone on to finish runner-up in MVP voting in 2022, 2 Super Bowls over the last 3 years, and of course in February, won the Super Bowl against Kansas City and won Super Bowl MVP. But the start of the Hurts era really started with this game all the way back in week 13 of 2020, and Jalen Hurts at that point was rocking the number 2. Now he's in that icy number 1. The Packers so far this season, they've been really good when they've been hot. They've had some weird, mysterious, very odd and wacky losses. Week 1, they began the season with a highly impressive victory over the Detroit Lions. They beat them badly, 27-13 at home. Then on Thursday night, short week, they dominated the Washington Commanders 27-18. That was a Commanders team that made it to the NFC Championship game last year and the number 1 seeded Lions. So 2 highly impressive wins to start the year. Obviously, the Commanders have started to get off track with all these injuries and not playing well. But then in week 3, after everybody was like, this is the Packers' year, they're Super Bowl favorites, they lost on the road against a bad, awful Cleveland Browns team, 13-10, and they only scored 10 points. Now, that Browns defense is legit, but that Packers offense was flying high going into week 3. Week 4, they tie the Dallas Cowboys in overtime 40-40. They have their bye week in week 5. They come out of the bye. They beat the Bengals 27-18. Barely hold on to beat the Cardinals. Had to come back in that game 27-23. And then Jordan Love, 2 games ago, was flawless. And when he's feeling it, he looks like one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. In that game against Pittsburgh, he completed, 20 straight passes in that game? And that was another really impressive victory for Green Bay, 35-25 over another quality opponent. But then they come back home last week. They're bad in the red zone. Love was up and down. Their run defense was awful. And they lose to Carolina on a last-second field goal, 16-13. And so when I scout Green Bay, when they're on, they look like one of the premier teams in the NFL. But on offense, there is a lack of identity under Matt LaFleur. He is from this Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay type of tree, and obviously he wants to run the ball first, but they've struggled a little bit maintaining consistency there. Throwing the ball, they've been a Jekyll and Hyde team. On defense, I do like what they've done, and obviously trading for Micah Parsons prior to the year has boosted Jeff Hafley's defense, and Hafley is a really good defensive coordinator. On the other sideline, the Eagles so far, coming out of the bye week, let's give you a refresher. Week 1, they beat the Dallas Cowboys 24-20. Week 2, they go on the road. They beat the Kansas City Chiefs by 3. Week 3, they score 29 unanswered, what was that? 29 unanswered points, I think it was. Either way, they went down early, or 19 unanswered points. Either way, they had that wild comeback win against the Rams, 33-26. The walk-off blocked field goal, scoop and score for the big boy, Jordan Davis. Week 4, they go on the road. They had that flawless first half, bad in the second half. They beat the Buccaneers 31-25. Then they give up 19 unanswered points to the Denver Broncos in the fourth quarter alone and drop that one for the first loss of the year, 21-17. Week 6, they fall to the Giants on Thursday Night Football in an embarrassing loss, 34-17. Then they flush those back-to-back defeats, and they go into the bye week with 2 very sound victories. 28-22 over the Vikings on the road, and then 38-20 over the Giants, their best and most complete performance in all 3 phases of the season. And so in scouting the Eagles, I think the last 2 games with those 2 victories, they've started to find a groove, especially on offense, and they've been led by Jalen Hurts. On defense, they've started to catch their stride, and they've put together performances that have lasted for an entire duration of the 60-minute ball game. I do think all year the defense at times has been able to bail the offense out when the offense has grown stagnant. The big question coming out of the bye week, can week 7 and week 8 and with what the Eagles did in those games, propel the Eagles for the rest of the way. Of course, during the bye week as well, Eagles general manager Howie Roseman was very busy. He made 3 trades leading into the NFL trade deadline and during that bye week. He traded for slot corner Michael Carter, who Howie said has been elite in the slot, but can also play safety. I wonder if Vic Fangio uses him there. Made the trade for Jaire Alexander to get a veteran presence and a former All-Pro in there at outside corner. Obviously, Alexander became a 2-time second-team All-Pro and a terrific player for the Green Bay Packers, so he gets to go up against his former team. And then on Monday morning, day before the deadline, Howie, another swing. Trades for edge rusher Jaelan Phillips, who thrived under Vic Fangio back in 2023, and he reunites with this former defensive coordinator who he played his best ball under. To the injury report for both squads, the practice window has been open for Nolan Smith, re-injured that triceps that he tore in the Super Bowl, so he's eligible to play in this game against Green Bay. Of note, I'm recording this on Wednesday. We'll get more clarity on the injury front as the week progresses. Jacorian Bennett also going to be eligible to play if he's ready with that pectoral injury. He was a full participant in the final 2 practices going into that Giants game prior to the bye. We'll see what the status is of Cam Jurgens with that knee injury. Got to give credit where credit is due. Brett Toth played really well against New York. A.J. Brown missed that Giants game with the hamstring injury. Adoree Jackson was out because of a concussion that he suffered against Minnesota. He does have one of the highest tight window throw rates among all corners in the NFL, but I think his play's been a little bit up and down. And then Brandon Graham, not injured, but coming out of retirement. He, too, is eligible to play against Green Bay for Vic Fangio's defense as well. Packers injury news. Brutal loss to a sensational player. Their all-world tight end, Tucker Kraft, tore his ACL in that loss against Carolina. Matthew Golden's shoulder injury, might be able to play in this game. Same can be said for Colby Wooden, the interior defensive lineman who got a lot of praise from Micah Parsons. Aaron Banks, he was a big signing for Green Bay in free agency to kind of improve that offensive line. His first season with the Packers has been hampered by a lot of injuries. He got injured in that game against Carolina. Nate Hobbs dealing with an MCL injury. Dontavian Wicks hasn't played the last couple of weeks due to a calf. Same can be said for Lucas Van Ness' foot. And then Jaden Reed still on IR. His practice window might not be open this week, but he's been working with Packers trainers over the last couple of weeks. You think we're done with our preview? No chance. We're only getting started and beginning to take flight. Coming up next, my keys to the game, matchups to watch, what the Eagles must do to beat the Green Bay Packers. That's all coming up right around the corner. But first, let's get to our sponsor, our friends at Chubby's, making our Eagles-Packers preview possible. I love all of their clothing items, whether it's a swimsuit, pants, shorts, a polo, a regular shirt. I just love what Chubby's has to offer. And for all of the real ones out there, you can get 20% off when you use the code CHATSPORTS. So I've been wearing everything from their flannel overshirt to the NFL Chubby's collection, the swimsuits during the summer season. Obviously, it's a fantastic item to wear as well. Fellas, if you want to look sharp when you meet the big family this holiday, you've got to check out our friends over at Chubby's. From family dinners to holiday parties, Chubby's has you covered, so you can focus on being yourself and letting the good vibes roll. Their stuff is so comfortable, it should come with a warning label. As the temperatures start to drop and the weather gets a little bit grim, their flannels, pullovers, quarter zips will keep you warm, but also stylish and ready for any type of occasion. From freezing your tail off at the football game and tailgates to crushing donuts at the pumpkin patch to holding court around the bonfire, going out on a date with your significant other. This holiday season, spread cheer and, of course, a little bit of drip with Chubby's. Perfect for upgrading your own winter rotation or gifting to somebody who already has everything. So here's the deal. For a limited time, Chubby's is giving our listeners 20% off your purchase at chubbyshorts.com/chatsports. That's chubbyshorts.com/chatsports. if it's Black Friday, you can skip the code, but still take advantage of even bigger markdowns during their exclusive Black Friday sale. Just head to chubbyshorts.com/chatsports. Use that code chatsports. Make sure to support our show and tell them that Philadelphia Eagles Now and Chat Sports sent you. All right, to the back half of the show, the meat and potatoes of our preview here. Coming up here on Philadelphia Eagles Now, Chase Senior here with you. What an awesome matchup we have in Week 10 on Monday Night Football, prime time between the Philadelphia Eagles and the Green Bay Packers. I'm going to give you my keys to the game, top matchups to watch, what the Eagles must do to beat Green Bay to stay atop the NFC, and of course, I'll give you my prediction. And then speaking of the NFC playoff picture, the Eagles had one of the best bye weeks that you could ever have. They didn't play a game, but they moved into the number one spot in the conference because the Packers lost at home to the Carolina Panthers. The Detroit Lions lost at home to the Minnesota Vikings. And then every other team inside the NFC East also lost, and that did the Eagles favors. And so their NFC record right now is 5-1. They're 6-2 on the year, number one spot in the NFC. And you think about where they are right now. They've beaten the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and so they're ahead of them in the NFC playoff picture. They have a much better record than the Seahawks inside the NFC. They've got an opportunity to beat Green Bay here to earn that tiebreaker. They already beat the Rams, and then they play the Lions next week in Week 11. And in this game between the Eagles and the Packers, given everything that is at stake, the importance of it, the magnitude of it, and the fact that these two teams look at each other as NFC rivals, this is going to have a playoff vibe, a playoff intensity, and playoff physicality to it. And they don't call it the frozen tundra of Lambeau Field for nothing. It might be the early portion, mid portion of November, but when you go up to Green Bay, Wisconsin, in the latter months of the season, you can expect the weather to be pretty chilly. And at night, on Monday Night Football, it's expected to have a low of 25 degrees with a real field temperature of 17 degrees. Now, as of right now, as I'm recording this preview on Wednesday, no precipitation in the forecast, so no snow expected. Probability of thunderstorms, as you see, nothing. Wind gusts, though, up to 22 miles per hour. So the weather could play a factor in this football game, and it's going to have that playoff, real football type of feel to it. How the Packers stack up on both sides of the ball. First on offense, an up and down season for Green Bay. At times they've looked dominant. At other times they've fallen flat on their faces and they can't really get anything going, whether it be through the air, on the ground, or finishing in the red zone. But the numbers, as far as the totality of their 2025 season, pretty good across the board on both sides of the pill. 11th in points per game at 25.8, 8th in yards per game at 360.4, 5th in yards per play at 5.9. They are the second best third down offense in the NFL, moving the chains at a 49% clip. They're 11th in the red zone at 62.8%. The inability to capitalize in the red zone, a big issue against Carolina last week. On defense, 8th in points per game, led by Micah Parsons at 20.8, 5th in yards per game at 286.4, 2nd in yards per play at 4.6. So they haven't given up a lot of chunk plays and explosives this year. The third down defense is good, a conversion rate of 34.6%. They have struggled a little bit in the red zone, 63.6% red zone touchdown scoring percentage for the opposition. That's 23rd in the NFL defensively for Green Bay. How the Eagles stack up. They've certainly inflated some of their offensive numbers with what they did in the 2 weeks prior to the bye week. They're 10th in points per game at 26, still 24th in yards per game at 304.4, 17th in yards per play at 5.3, although we've seen more explosives the last couple of games. 28th on third downs. That has to get better. 33.3% is very low, but the positive spin, still the best red zone offense in the NFL. Once they get in the 20, they're scoring a touchdown 85% of the time. On defense, 19th in points per game, 23rd in yards per game, 16th in yards per play, 26 on third downs, But once again, really good in the red zone, that bend but don't break type of mentality and results for Vic Fangio's unit. My keys to the game and top matchups to watch. A big question for Green Bay going into this one. How do the Packers and their offense adjust without Tucker Kraft? He was making some noise, maybe solidifying himself as the best tight end in the National Football League. He tore his ACL last week against the Carolina Panthers. You certainly hate to see that, especially with such a special player who's a dominant force physically. And what he's able to do as a blocker and a pass catcher, he was putting together an awesome season. 44 targets, 32 catches, 489 receiving yards, and average yards per catch of 15.3. So on those seam balls, those balls down the number, or just picking up yak, he was so dynamic. And in the red zone, he was also incredible. 6 receiving touchdowns on the year. An awful loss for this Packers offense and a very difficult player to replace. And so you look at this Eagles off-ball linebacker rotation, the players who are going to be tasked with covering Tucker Kraft, in addition to Cooper DeJean out of the slot, Zach Bond, Nakobe Dean, Jihad Campbell. And you look at these 3 players on your screen here, we'll see what Vic Fangio does with them. Nakobe Dean has gotten more snaps the last 2 games. He's played really well, and he's really good against the run because the Eagles were so thin at edge rusher. Jihad Campbell was being used more so as a pass rusher, not as an off-ball linebacker. And his snaps, because of that, have gone down a little bit because he's one of the smallest edge rushers in the game, if that were his primary position. And so, interested to see coming out of the bye how Vic Fangio uses his off-ball linebackers as far as the snap count. Key to the game number 2, got to see this Eagles offense stay in their bag. Because in the 2 victories prior to the bye week, on the road against Minnesota, one of the top defenses in the NFL, and at home against the Giants, they're on fire. And you hope that this Eagles offense has found something. Most importantly, that they found their identity. That's been an issue with the Packers all year. An inability to find their offensive identity. The Eagles offense against New York, 427 total yards. Jalen Hurts threw for 179 yards through the air, but 4 touchdowns, no picks. He was highly efficient in that game. The Eagles had finally a breakout rushing performance on the ground, running for 276 yards on the ground on 33 attempts. Saquon Barkley had that 65-yard rushing touchdown. Tank Bigsby was also awesome. They picked up 22 first downs, did give up 4 sacks, but the Giants' defensive front is very good. And the key to those 2 wins prior to the bye, no turnovers in each of them. Against the Vikings, this was a pass-happy Eagles offensive attack led by Jalen Hurts. 361 yards of total offense, 326 of them through the air. Hurts was incredible. 19 of 26, 3 tuds, no picks. They only had 45 rushing yards, 13 first downs, did give up 3 sacks, and then the big number again, 0 turnovers. And going into the bye, this is where Hurts' numbers were. And I think that he should continue to be in the MVP conversation. He has 20 touchdowns and 2 total turnovers this year. He has the most touchdowns in the National Football League, or at least did going into the bye. Tied for 3rd in passing touchdowns and passer rating. Tied for the most wins in the NFC going into the bye. And was 5th in completion rate at 70.2%. Key to the game number 3. If you can bother Jordan Love early, it really impacts him for the rest of the game. If he's able to find a groove, find a rhythm, and get his confidence early in the game, he starts to sling it around, has no fear with the way in which he plays. He's very decisive. And with his arm talent, he looks like one of the top quarterbacks in the NFL. But if you hit him, if you sack him, if he's under duress, you can force him into bad decisions and turnovers. And then you start to see his confidence kind of dwindle and fall apart a little bit. Now, this year, he's been really good as far as his overall numbers. He's completing nearly 71% of his passes. He's thrown for more than 2,000 yards, 13 touchdowns, 3 picks, and a quarterback rating of 107.9. But in his career, he has struggled against Philadelphia. Why? Because they've put him under siege, and they forced him into a lot of mistakes. He's 1-2 against the Eagles. This year, as I just mentioned, he's completing just shy of 71% of his passes. 3 games against the Eagles, he's completing 56.6% of his throws. He's thrown for 585 yards in those 3 games, 3 touchdowns, and 4 interceptions. Key to the game number 4. which Green Bay run defense shows up. All year, they've been pretty good against the run. But as I'm about to talk about, against Carolina and Rico Dowdle, they were bad. And they got shellacked. Yards per rush this season for Jeff Hafley's unit, 4 yards per carry. That's 9th best in the NFL. Rushing yards per game, 89.4. That ranks number 5 among the 32 teams. And teams are running it a decent amount, 22.6. In games where Saquon this year has 15 or more carries, the Eagles are undefeated. And so that's an important number for the Eagles to get to and to find success on the ground. And did the Packers' rushing defense get exposed by Carolina and Dave Canales, who's a really good offensive mind, the head coach for Carolina? Rico Dowdle ran wild. And he also ran wild against the Cowboys. So he's been on a little bit of a heater of late. 25 carries for $130, 5.2 yards per carry, and 2 rushing touchdowns. And of course, the Eagles in Week 8 prior to the Week 9 bye, they ran for nearly 300 yards against New York. Now, the Giants do have one of the worst rushing defenses in the NFL, but an issue all year for this Eagles offense, an inability and a lack of executing. Offensive linemen missing blocks, wide receivers not really blocking downfield. I thought the execution, upon looking at the tape against New York, was really good. And Saquon ran wild, best game of the year, 14 carries for 150 yards, 10.7 yards per tote, 2 total touchdowns. And then Tank Bigsby, 9 carries for 104 yards, 11.6 yards per carry. And I love the physical element that he brings that Eagles backfield. With it being cold, a real field temperature of about 17 degrees, obviously establishing the run, finding success on the ground, going to be important for Philadelphia in this one. And then something to monitor here in this game. How do these new pieces get incorporated for the Eagles? Yes, they traded for Michael Carter prior to the bye and Jaire Alexander a day before their official bye. They trade for Jaelan Phillips on Monday as Howie Roseman got ahead of everybody, as he often does with contract extensions. He did that with the big trade, making that splash on Monday morning. But how often do these players play? Do they play a lot? What is their snap count? What is their usage? What are their roles in this Eagles defense? Michael Carter, elite play in the slot, and he can play a little bit of safety. He's not going to play on the outside. He shouldn't play on the outside. 85% of his career snaps have been in the slot. For Jaire Alexander, he only played a couple of games with Baltimore. Gave up 5 catches on 5 targets for more than 100 yards. Isn't the same player physically. Had a bad PCL injury last year. How does he fare against his former team? At the very least, he can give you intel as far as what to expect from Matt LaFleur and Jordan Love. And then Jaylen Phillips, this is a little bit easier to incorporate an edge rusher. One, you just tell him, hey, pin your ears back on an obvious passing down and get after the quarterback. Obviously on rundowns, set the edge and be disciplined with your rush and contain that rusher inside the tackle box. Or just make plays if you need to get out to the perimeter. Obviously, in the secondary, it's more complex because there are more nuances in a passing play with your coverage scheme, with what transpires during the course of a play. And for Phillips, of course, he has familiarity with Vic Fangio's defense. So that's something that I'm going to be watching for. How much do Carter, Alexander, and Phillips play? What are their roles? And what type of impact can they have during this stretch run and in this game against Green Bay? So without further ado, predict the score. Eagles, Packers. Who you got in this football game, and what is your score prediction? I think these two teams are evenly matched. I think this game is going to come down to the wire. I think these two ball clubs are going to exchange punches all night long because I look at these two teams as two of the best teams in the NFL and in the NFC. At the end of the day, though, the Eagles have fared well against Green Bay. I like how their physicality matches up against the Packers. I like their big game experience a little bit better. Plus, they have the rest advantage coming off of the bye. Give me the Birds 28-25. Philadelphia picks up a huge win, and they stay in that number 1 spot in the NFC. And we round out the preview with this super chat coming in from Bradley, $2 super chat. And he says this: I hope we get 4 tush-push touchdowns against the Green Bay Packers. Obviously, I said in that preview that the Packers, as we know, it's well documented, they proposed to ban the tush-push. Then they kind of walked it back as an organization after this became a huge storyline. You wanted it banned. Jordan Love tried to run it at one point last year. He tripped over himself. You can't execute it. The Eagles can. And you know what's funny about the tush push? I saw the Buffalo Bills run it a bunch of times when they played the Chiefs last week. No complaints on social media. But the Eagles, they jump early. So did Buffalo. Oh, yeah, I actually saw Seattle jump early on the tush push as well. No complaints from anybody. People don't like it because the Eagles have perfected it. And I hope that, yeah, I'm with you, Bradley. They run it successfully against Green Bay, and they show them what's up. All right, thanks to everybody for tuning into the show here today. A great live show yesterday, a great live show today. We'll be live on Monday Night Football. Can't wait for that, so we'll catch you then. For Chip, I'm Chase. Go Birds. Peace.